What's going on, everyone? My name is Rzepka, and today's video is the second video of a 15-part series where I speak with 17 world-class trumpeters. In each video, I'll present one question, and then you'll hear that question answered in sequence by all 17 trumpeters. The trumpeters I spoke with are as follows: Karin Bliznik, Randy Brecker, Chris Coletti, Pacho Flores, Tine Helseth, Roger Ingram, Ingrid Jensen, Tage Larsen, Lynch, Selina Ott, Kenny Rampton, Michael Sachs, Arturo Sandoval, Sibaja, Bria Skonberg, Lessie Vonner, and Bijon Watson. I'll be posting a new video from this series every 1 or 2 weeks, as I'm able to edit them. This video came together much quicker than the first one, but it was still over 30 hours of work. This video gives a unique insight into the teachers that shaped and influenced the lives and careers of these great trumpeters. Now, having seen all of these interviews, I can honestly say you're not going to want to miss any of these videos. So make sure that you subscribe and hit that bell so that you're notified when the next video comes out. Hopefully this video will inspire you and get you thinking about all of your past teachers and mentors. The people who inspired you to become a musician, the people who encouraged you and helped cultivate your musical identity. I think that we can all agree that we draw influence from many different people for many different reasons, and that we all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. And that is why the second question I asked all of my guests was, who was your most influential teacher and why? Now, this is a long video, so relax, get in a comfy spot. Also, I've broken this video into chapters so that you can easily jump to any answer and to make it easier to use as reference material. With all that being said, let's hear what everyone had to say.
Basically, I've only had 2 teachers, like proper teachers. I started with this Norwegian trumpeter. Heidi is her name, Heidi Johansen. She plays in the opera orchestra, and my mother knew her. So then I just started taking lessons with her when I was 6, 7. So of course she was the foundation, you know. And then when I was 14, she just kind of gave me like to her old professor, who, I mean, has been definitely the most influential, who's made me. Without him I wouldn't be me, kind of. So Arnulf Nauru Nilsen is his name. He's now retired, but he was the co-principal in the Oslo Phil. Yeah, he was truly special, both as a person and as a musician. Yeah, I just kind of understood. He made me kind of realize my potential in the best way. Like he saw that, for instance, my musicality was something that was kind of special, that I liked my identity, and that was his main focus, to nourish that, and to really focus on the importance. But at the same time, of course, all the technical stuff. But it's very special because a lot of really great trumpet players, I mean, that had him as a teacher. So he was actually very influential in how the trumpet life looks now. And he was the teacher, when I studied. So tenting, I mean, the whole trumpet section, in tenting, we had him as a teacher. So he's kind of, he's like my, second dad, kind of. So without him, I would definitely not be where I am today.
It's hard to narrow it down to one person. My first trumpet teacher was hugely influential on me, named Tommy Perello. He's still in Vegas, still doing it, still practicing, still playing. Tommy was a huge inspiration to me, and still is. My second trumpet teacher in Las Vegas growing up, who was high school through college, and until he was my teacher till he passed away a few years ago, Walt Blanton. Walt is the one who turned me on to the Bill Adam routine. Walt studied with Bill Adam at Indiana University. Those are my 2 earliest influences. Walt was a huge influence on me, not only as a trumpet player, but as an artist. Walt talked about the artistry of music and creativity, and really influenced me more than probably anybody in my life when it comes to that. And as a person, Walt was like a second father to me. He really took me under his wing, and I miss him dearly. So, I've had so many other great teachers over the years who've been huge influences on me. But if I had to narrow it down to one or two, it would be from my early days as a kid growing up. Tommy Perello was my first trumpet teacher, man. I was in junior high school, and he really stressed me the importance of practicing and what to practice and how to practice, and led, showed me by example, because he was like the first call lead trumpet player in Las Vegas. He and my dad played together a lot. And so, I mean, Tommy and Walt, both of them. I can't choose one, honestly. Both of them are like my two fathers.
Any single teacher that I've had along the way has been highly influential on my life. So it's really hard to pick one, but I will, just for the sake of this interview. I believe that at a certain point in my master's degree, I not only decided that I wanted to be an orchestral trumpet player, but I was given the environment to learn how to be one prior to being in the position. And I felt like at Northwestern, Barbara Butler really helped me in ways that I didn't even know that I needed to be educated in, so that when I got to the position, there were a list of things that I already knew as to how to work with a section, as to how to resolve difficult disagreements with members of the orchestra, how to lead a section, and even to the point where she would walk us through, conduct just 4 trumpet players through an entire symphony of just segments of it, so that when I sat down to play, it was as if I had already played these symphonies before. And so I think that was probably the most influential part of my life in getting me to where I am now. However, I think it's misunderstood how much you can actually learn from your colleagues. And we forget that we are only with our teacher maybe for a studio class and for a private lesson. And like I said, at Northwestern, we would have an excerpt class where we would play through these segments of the symphonies. And so I saw her about 3 times a week, but she's a busy person. She had like 14 students and a whole life of her own. She lives about half an hour outside of the city as well at the time. And it was the people that I would play duets with. It was the people that I would perform my solos for. It was the brass quintet that I was in. You don't realize when you're surrounded by other colleagues that are at such a high level, it can skyrocket you more than someone just explaining to you how to work with other people, right? And I did feel really lucky at Northwestern to be surrounded with so many fabulous colleagues that I'm still friends with today. And I know for a fact also helped accelerate me into this field.
I'm sure a lot of us have heard this phrase, you are your own best teacher. And the first person I heard say that to me was Bobby Shue. And to answer your question, honestly, I would have to say the best teacher I've had is me. When you choose a teacher to study with, everyone should at least consider and audition teachers. I mean, is that person going to give you the things you want so that you can achieve your personal goals? And when you pay somebody for their time and their information and their guidance, that's their job, to give you what it is that you're going into their studio and asking them for. And you take that information and you take it home and you incorporate it and you apply it to your playing. In many ways, you're teaching yourself. I would have to say Bobby Shue has been very influential to me for that very statement alone. He said, you are your own best teacher. I'm just giving you information. I'm suggesting things for you to do. And you're paying me for my time. And it's up to you to go home and teach yourself. And Bobby Shue taught me how to listen. We focused on big band lead trumpet playing. He showed me what the yoga breath was all about. He explained to me how the aperture and the embouchure work. and he explained how mouthpieces work and the various benefits and drawbacks from playing different board horns. You know, I went on the road for the first time in between 11th and 12th grade, but then after high school, I did a tour with Quincy Jones's band, and then I got hired by Tom Jones, and I stayed with Tom Jones for 6 years. I worked with him playing lead trumpet and went around the world a few times with him, and I got the gig when I was just 18. And before I left, I went over to Bobby Shu's house to take one last lesson. And he said, look, don't make a career out of being Tom Jones's lead trumpet player. Don't get lost out there. And this was the 70s. And I was kind of a wild kid, you know, and he says, and I know you're going to want to go out there and party and have a good time and everything. But listen, I want you to stay focused. And every time you get to a major city, I want you to take a trumpet lesson with somebody, even if it's just one lesson. And so I took his advice, and I went and I took a lesson from William Vacchiano. I took a series of lessons with Roy Stevens. I took a series of lessons with Carmine Caruso. I took a series of lessons with Jerry Cowlett. I took a lesson from Dr. Donald Reinhardt when we were in Philly. I took a series of lessons from James Stamp. And what I learned was that in many ways, everybody's kind of saying the same thing, but they have their own way of saying it. You know, I try to resist the urge to place greater importance on certain people and less importance on others. All those teachers, to me, were extremely beneficial. And I would take that information, you know, armed with what Bobby Shu had told me early on, that you are your own best teacher. I would take that information and I would incorporate it into my playing. And I was very thoughtful about it. And I would remember everything that they would say. And so I would have to say, to answer your question honestly, I'm probably my best teacher. And it's probably the same with you. You're probably your own best teacher, you know, if you think about it.
This one's always hard because I had many great teachers over the years, but I think one of the most impactful ones I had was Tanya Darby. Amazing trumpet player, lead, like one of the top lead trumpet players in the world, in my opinion. And besides just the trumpet stuff she like helped me with, like building my range and projecting and everything I was working on in college, she was, I think, the first female trumpet player teacher I had. And just being able to connect with her on that level and like hear her story, I'm like going through the scene and like getting into the places that she was really inspiring, and it helped me navigate my own journey as a female trumpet player.
Many teachers. I can tell you, for example, my father, Orlando Paredes, when I was young, Jairo Hernandez, Eduardo Manzanilla, Eric Aubier in Paris. But my most influential teacher for me is Maestro José Antonio Abreu in Venezuela. He's the founder of El Sistema. And Vicente Honorato is the president of Stoneby Instruments. Those guys, they gave to me a lot of support, and also in a philosophical way, they gave to me a lot of tools, you know, to understand the life.
Because of course, you know the answer. Dizzy Gillespie, John Burns Gillespie, but I never took a proper trumpet lesson from him or something like that. But you know, but I learned a lot more than this a simple trumpet lesson. I learned directly from him, especially his passion and love for music. You know, what it really is the best lesson I learned from him. You know, to be in love with music, to keep that passion alive, you know, and be enthusiastic and be ready always to trying to learn new things and improving and discovering things and experimenting and share experience with people. You know, he wasn't extremely enthusiastic, you know, about music in general. And also as a person, he was a big heart. He has a huge heart, you know. And that was very important because, you know, for me to admire an artist, I need to admire the person too. It's impossible to me to separate that, you know. You have to be human. You have to be a person first. And then whatever you do as a profession. In all my younger years, you know, when I started, I never have private lesson or anything, you know. I was for many years trying to figure it out, you know. And in the beginning I started playing by ear, and then I learned how to read music. And later on, when I was probably, I don't know, maybe 50 something years old or something, I got an opportunity to take a few lessons from Johan Razy. And then I took a lesson from Crow Gordon as well. But I was already, you know, I was playing music for 40 years already. And but Johan was very influential, you know, because in the way he talked to me and the things he said when I was in his house, man, those words still ringing in my head every single day. Every time I put a horn in my mouth, Johan is over here, you know. He was one of the kind, man. And what a beautiful human being. What a beautiful human being. Great mentality, very positive, very optimist. And his spirit, you know, was amazing, you know. He really cared a lot, which is, that's the best lesson I learned from him, you know, about the quality of the sound, the quality of the tone. When I took the first lesson from him, he asked me to play the lesson number 1, page number 1 of Max Schlossberg, you know. But very soft, pianissimo, with very soft attack. I was playing the night before 2 long sets in the jazz club over here in LA. And my chop was, you know, when I tried to play that, I didn't have that control, you know. And then I felt so embarrassed, you know, and I said, oh my goodness, my God. And then I get back, I was living in Miami at the time. I get back to Miami, I start to taking care of that, you know, and practice that. When I came for the second lesson, I get obsessed with that. And then I start to play. He barely hear me. He couldn't hear me. It was so soft. And then he said, it's not necessary that you play that soft. I said, thank you, maestro. This is exactly what I want to hear. But that was something, you know. And then when you know Tom Hooten, you know who is Tom Hooten? When he came to here to the house, we played together, and you know I get a lot of advice from him because he, you know, he's a good classical player. And then I played some things for him, and he told me, he said, man, I never hear anybody play that soft. But that was because Yuan, you know, he really pushed me to that. And I discovered later on that's one of the ways to really have a control of the production of sound. To be sure that the amount of air you're using corresponds with the vibration, and then you produce the amount of sound that you really want to do. And then that gives you a better control to manipulate your sound production in the way you want, not in the way the sound come out. You know what I mean? And that make a big difference, because you really start to having control on your sound production. And that is very important part of the whole equation, you know.
I had 4 big teachers, actually. My first teacher was my father, for 7 years, I think, until I was 13. He learned me all the basics and the fundamentals and showed me all the trumpet schools there are, all the exercises. And, you know, he really took care of my embouchure. And actually, my mom, too, she's not a trumpet player. She's a flutist, but she was a very important teacher for me, too. But I will say this is like my family is my first teacher. And then 5 years with Martin Mühlfellner in Vienna. He's from the Vienna Philharmonics. And there I learned to play the trumpet better and kind of get a really stable fundament, you know, learn the solo pieces. And then before I started my bachelor's degree in Vienna, I was like 1 year, I studied with Reinhold Friedrich in Germany, in Karlsruhe. And he was a big motivator, and he has this big aura, and everybody who knows him knows he has really much energy, and this was really important for me. I was 15, I think, and you know, you need this kind of energy to feel really motivated about practicing and stuff. So this was really great for me. And then my bachelor's degree, I studied with Roman Rindberger, and I'm still studying with him now in my master's degree. And he, of course, he accompanied me with the ARD competition, which was a really big thing. And in every single topic, he is my mentor, and I can talk to him with about everything. So yeah, that's my important trumpet people.
It's hard to say just one teacher. I can't just stop with one, but Barbara Butler was my most recent teacher. Langston Fitzgerald, Rich Illman from Michigan State, Leon Marion when I was in high school. He was a big jazz guy. Leon was amazing. I used to go out to his house in Woburn, Massachusetts. I used to take the green line, the last line on, I remember it was a west line or something like that on the T. Get to his house, and he was always cooking something in his kitchen, like usually like a shrimp scampi or something. So the place like reeked of garlic. And it was always on a Friday, the lessons. And he had a Friday gig every Friday night. And he's like in the kitchen, like cooking. He's like, man, get set up, man, get set up. And, you know, just the smells wafting and like, all right, man. He'd like, sit down, how you doing? Hey, all right, you ready to go? You ready to go? You pick, like, all right, man. You ready to do that warm up? You ready? And you pick up sword. Sometimes you just got to pick your horn up cold. Sometimes you just got to go. Right, ready? All right, play this. All right, go ahead, man. I'm just sitting there like, wow, okay. And then I like, you know, fumble around. And so, but that was just so cool. He was so, just, I realize now, you know how like later on, you realize how great some teachers were. You're young and dumb and you just kind of, you're just trying to figure stuff out. But he was such a great teacher. But all of my teachers have been so great.
I think it'd be hard to really credit any one of them because I think everything I got from each teacher only made sense because of the tutelage I had up to that point. And so it would bias the most recent ones. But one of my first teachers was a guy that teaches at the College of Staten Island named Mike Moriali. And actually I had a teacher before him that I really think was horrible, but he was amazing. And he's actually a jazz trumpet player, and he still teaches there. It's fantastic. You should check him out. And then he's the one that said at one point, he's like, I've done all I can do for you. You should go study with Lori Frink. And I had never heard of her. I was just like some silly kid in high school. And I went and studied with her for years, and that was unbelievable. And then I studied with David Krause, which was also unbelievable and completely different. And that influenced my concept of sound. And I should say, Lori Frink was amazing because she was like almost like a doctor. You'd come in and you'd either think you sounded great, and she'd say, that's great, but this, and then do these things for a week, and it was like giving you medicine. Or you might come in with a question, like everything feels good, but that, and she would give you a same kind of a prescription. And Dave Krause was like, sound, air, and that's it. And now when I interviewed him like last summer, and he was like, all I think about is sound, that's it. And it was so different to be so, on one hand, so much less to think about, but on the other hand, so picky about one aspect of playing. And it was a really useful thing for me. And just thinking about how to float the sound, that was the first thing I'd ever, first person I'd heard say that. And through him, I got a couple lessons through Jim Pandolfi, but just a few, who was also really influential. Then I studied with Tom Smith in the New York Philharmonic, which was amazing. He just had such a clear head and always, I feel like, gave me a comment that instantaneously made the phrasing or the piece just sound better. And that was at Manhattan School of Music. And then my last long-term teacher was Mark Gould, and everybody knows Mark Gould for being legendary for being not the same teacher for everybody. And for me, actually, I almost didn't play for him at all. He kept on telling me I had to stop practicing, and I was like, but I'm already not really practicing. And then I don't know if this is really true because I can't really remember it, but according to him, I stopped practicing, and then I took an audition and I won that audition. And that was like, he's like, you see, I told you shouldn't. But he was influential because I think I was at that point kind of getting a little burnt out. And as students tend to feel, I'm sure anyone that's listening to this as a student can relate, you get kind of confused. You're being told how to play by a million different people, and you lose that sense of self. Like, because ultimately you're the one making the sound. You're the one that has to decide what you're going to sound like. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. I mean, it does, but if you feel like you're asking questions when you play, you're never going to get anywhere. So Mark Gould taught me to just play.
I've had many teachers in my life. I'm always trying to learn as much as I can from anybody that I see. I'm talking all the time, trying to ask questions or pay attention to what people are saying to try to learn. When I was younger, I would say I had three very influential teachers, which was his name is Ricardo Vargas, a teacher from Costa Rica that I started with, then Jorge Duarte, who is another teacher from Costa Rica, and then Gil Johnson, who I studied with for about 10 years. I studied with Gil Johnson for a long time. Those were my primary teachers.
So the first mentor I had was this amazing Australian cornet player named Simon Stribling. He came to the jazz festival in my hometown in British Columbia, and while he was there, he fell in love with another local. So thankfully, he moved from Australia to Canada and became my mentor. And he was so giving. I realize now, especially being an adult, how much time and information he would just lay on me. He introduced me to lots of Louis Armstrong music, Roy Eldridge, Django Reinhardt, Ruby Braff, lots of recordings. He let me come and sit in with his band all the time as much as possible. So really being under his wings, playing second trumpet to him, learning his vocabulary was very, very influential. And also he just had this extreme joy for life. He just was always going for everything. And it gave me this idea that I should just always try, be positive as we are here, and really go for it. My second, only in a chronological order, but definitely also at the top of my list, is Warren Vacher. I've been living in New York City for over 10 years, and one of the main reasons I moved was to study with him, and I studied with him regularly for 2 years. And so basically, Warren refined all of those raw materials that I had gained from Simon, from school and beyond, and he set me up with a regiment of how to really focus on the technique of playing trumpet. He might have a reputation for being a bit of a curmudgeon, and I think he likes that, but he's got a huge heart, and he only gets cranky when people don't take music seriously enough.
I think overall was William Adam, who I studied with, as did people like Jerry Hay, Chris Bodie, Charlie Daniels, Larry Hall. He was just such a uplifting character, besides the fact that he was all about sound, projection, getting your air moving into the horn. He was just ahead of his time as a positive influence. He imbued the word patience in everything you do. I got in really early. I'm a little older than those guys, so he didn't have really a prescribed routine. I don't think he thought of it like that, but they were all things from Clark, Arbans, and Schlossberg. And I think it really helped my sound and my strength as a trumpet player. But even above that, he was just somebody you never forget. You know, the truth is they were all good. I studied with Sigmund Herring from the Philadelphia Orchestra, then great Philly trumpet player Tony Marcion, but he also helped my technique. He was enamored of the fact that I was a jazz player. He had also taught Lee Morgan because he went to high school with Lee. And he was a jazzer and a classical player's body. He was just a wonderful man. Also studied with Ray Crisaro for a while, great classical player. Troidel in New Jersey with Lou Soloff, we would go out there. The man who also helped me the most, so I have to mention him, and everybody was studying with him in New York, was Carmine Caruso. He had a particular method of that he called, had nothing to do with music. I mean, his exercises, which I still do, not every day, but occasionally, especially if I'm stiff, really help my range and flexibility, things like that. Also, I got to mention one other guy, and we've never met face to face, but now with the online thing, I've gotten to know Charlie Porter really well, and he really has gotten down to every aspect of the trumpet, and plus he plays so well, so he can just every facet of the trumpet. It's a straight line to everything. I can't say I ever had that. Somebody to explain the fundamentals and to play the fundamentals as well as he did. So I'm always looking at his videos. He's really helped me a lot the last couple of years since I discovered him.
First most influential teacher was my 3rd and 4th grade band teacher, Mr. Baker. Mr. Baker is the one that made sure that my parents knew about opportunities to pursue private lessons, and saw that I might have a little bit of raw talent to grow upon. So Mr. Baker for sure. And then in my later years, I mean, it's kind of a tie between Grant Hungerford, who is studied with Boyd Hood at USC, and I went to USC, and of course I took lots of master classes and stuff with Boyd when I was there. But Grant Hungerford was a teacher in Palos Verdes, California, that really put me back in focus my playing, getting me back to fundamentals. I was fortunate while I grew up in Boston to have a lot of opportunities to do like Empire Brass Quintet type stuff. Charlie Sluter is here, so to be able to go to all those master classes and see and get the information from that. But in terms of influencing and really projecting me to the professional career I have now, Grant Hungerford really helped me tie all that in. And then of course for jazz, it's Snooky Young. I mean, I sat next to him for 16 years before he passed away, and to have that feedback immediately after you play something or how to approach something, and the conversations we'd have when we were carpooling to rehearsals, totally invaluable. I would not be where I'm at today without that type of mentorship, I guess, is key.
I've had lots of great teachers. At the same time, I've taught myself a lot. My first teacher was a gentleman named Douglas Myers, who at the time I studied with him, which was in high school. He was with the Milwaukee Symphony. He really exposed me to the right way to do things. And he was a Vacchiana student, and I think imparted a lot of those qualities. I mean, he knew I was a jazz player, or a would-be jazz player, really. And so not only did we go through the Schlossberg book and the St. Chacon book, but we also went through the Jimmy Giuffre jazz interpretation book, which had actually had a lot of good things into it and some other things too. He also worked with me with sight singing, which was really important. Most of all, I think being exposed to somebody, and this is where I became like a real fanatic about the lip slurs, right? Because when you hear somebody who can really play those things and like, what? You could do it like that? It can sound like that? I mean, he's the one that got me from where I was never quite sure whether I was hitting A flat or a B flat with the first on the first and above the staff, to where I knew that I was hitting the right note, and the notes were connecting up. And he gave me a great foundation to teach myself after I got out of high school, because to be honest with you, I never really had a technique teacher in college. Maybe after Doug, I felt like the teachers that were available to me in school weren't quite what I was looking for. So I just preferred to keep on teaching myself and to take lessons from people that I came across. I actually had a couple lessons with Mr. Schilke in Chicago back in my undergraduate days, which were very helpful, and then other people too. And I would read a lot of things. I got turned on to a lot of the things in some of those Charles Collin books, and also a little bit later the Farkas Art of Brass Playing, that gave me a lot of insight into the physical part of playing the instrument. When I got to New York, I was able to study briefly with Mr. Vacchiano himself. I remember calling him up and he said, "Who do you study with?" And he said, "Doug Myers." "Okay, come on over." So I think the couple of lessons that I had with him were very influential. Unfortunately, that was one of the only times in my life where I was actually playing a small diameter mouthpiece. So Mr. Vacchiano took one look at my mouthpiece and said, "Oh, you're a dance band man, huh?" And I sort of wished I would have had the 1 1/4 C that I was playing on before that period and then after that period. So I don't know how that came about. I think the most influential teachers that I've had in terms of playing jazz they were certainly my teachers in my undergraduate, the guitarist Manti Ellis and the saxophonist Berkeley Fudge. One of my great mentors, Charles McPherson, who I met when I moved to San Diego before I moved to New York. He turned me on to Lonnie, who was his partner in terms of being proteges of Barry Harrison, both playing with Charles Mingus, and in terms of knowing more about Barry's system of studying bebop. The few lessons that I took with Lonnie were really great. And, I'd consider both of them as some of my greatest teachers. Other teachers that I've studied with that I've gotten a lot out of were Mark Gould, Peter Bond from the Met, who I studied with in later on in life. And then also I availed myself of the opportunity to study with Professor Fielder at a certain point, also a little bit later on in my career. And I sure am glad I did that, because I think of all the teachers that I've had since Doug Myers, he was the one whose stuff stuck with me the most in terms of how I teach. I wrote down everything he said in his lessons, just as if I was an undergraduate. And I'm so glad that I did that. I think that the acuity of how he taught and the clarity of what he taught was really important to me.
My most influential teacher, right there, the great Lori Frink, not me. The reason she was the most influential teacher was because she was the first female teacher I had. And as much as she was very, I guess I could use the word strong. She was a strong personality in her teaching with me. She wasn't just like, "Oh, I'll be nice to you because you're a girl." It was more like, let's get to the nuts and bolts of what's missing here in your situation on the trumpet. And there was a lot missing, let me tell you. I had no endurance, I had no range, I had very limited resonance in my sound. I don't know how I got to where I got at that point. I was 21 or 22 when I first met her. And I took 2 series of lessons with her doing the Caruso method. The first series, the first kind of year, I think maybe 9 months of studying with her was one of those, you too can have double high C in 3 weeks situation. It really was literally that. I was like, oh my God, I was just not aware of so many fundamental elements in my day-to-day playing that were missing. So the first series of lessons really cemented me in learning how to play the trumpet finally, with a lot less tension and a lot less hang-ups and issues that I had had up to that point. Immediately after I studied with her, I got a gig teaching in Austria. So I was teaching students what I had just been learning, which is a luxury, right? Especially to have such a compressed time of very focused technical digging in, which I hadn't ever had. I'd never had a proper, like, real, nuts and bolts trumpet teacher up until that point. It was all about music and bebop and swing and feel and all of these other elements that are also important. And then the next time I studied with her was when I had a serious Bell's palsy issue on this side of my face. And it was an emergency. It was like, I got to call the surgeon, the trumpet surgeon. Where is she? Between her and my amazing Chinese acupuncturist, I was able to do something that a lot of people aren't able to do, which is, recover within 3 months, 3 to 6 months, play again after not being able to play at all. I completely lost everything. And it was not just to do with the chops, it was to do with the body and the mind and stress and a lot of other things too, I think, that accumulated that led to that event in my life. But Laurie Frink got me through both of those pivotal growth phases in the way she taught.
Had the luxury of having some incredible mentors and people who've been supportive over the years. I'm just going to name a few before I get to the person who I think had the most prominent influence on me. Tony Plogue, who was my teacher from the end of high school through all of my undergraduate. Tony was sensational in every way, and I owe him so much. And he was incredibly supportive, some tough love at times, but, because I was a when I was younger, but Tony really got me thinking about music, got me thinking about how to use my physicality and my fundamentals, really, getting my mind around thinking the right things and doing the right things. And he was just such a wealth of knowledge. It was just phenomenal. Then I went to New York and I studied with Mark Gould. And Gould, Gould's like my crazy older brother, and just from the beginning, there was that chemistry. And in many ways, he was a great extension of and continuation of what Tony was giving me. And, with Gould, because he'd been playing in the opera and Gould has a very unique creative spirit. I'll just leave it at that. And, he's so intelligent and like Tony, and just the way he came to music making and, getting me to explore more of the emotional side and the colors and the and just the character in the music and digging deeper into the music beyond the notes. And, a lot of it probably came from him just, being in the pit and being around the opera and, in that theatrical realm, and him being, in some ways, it'll probably kill me for saying this, a very theatrical person. And, very, very much, very provocative and very, highly intelligent, all those things. And he was that way with me as a teacher, and, really prodded me and poked me and pushed me and got me to think in a lot deeper level about what I was doing and why I was doing and the purpose that I was doing it. And then, of course, there are a number of other people who've influenced me. I mean, growing up hearing Tom Stevens, being in New York and hearing Phil Smith, Summer in Aspen with Lou Ranger, who was a phenomenal teacher and mentor for me, got me thinking about things in a different way and illuminating things in the most intelligent manner. Roger Voisin and Armando Gatalla, who became very trusted mentors. Here in Cleveland, getting to sit with David Zauder in the orchestra for 9 years, and Dave becoming very much a father to me, as much as a father as my own dad. And all of his influences, studying with Harry Glantz and Leonard B. Smith, and his experience in the Cleveland Orchestra for 30 years before I got here. John Mack, our wonderful longtime principal oboe player, who's a great mentor. And like Dave, he was like they were my, like brothers. And, Dave was like my dad and John was like my uncle. And the influence that John had on me, getting a chance to teach with John a lot and being in that sort of an environment and really getting to hear him explaining what he did and his purpose and his meaning behind the music, and just such a wealth of experience and knowledge from them was incredible and had a giant influence on me. But probably the most profound influence on me had to have been from my time studying with James Stamp. Really, there's a demarcation line for me of before I saw Mr. Stamp and everything that has happened since. Every day I feel like his philosophy and his manner of how he went about things permeates everything that I do and everything that I teach, everything that I play. And the beauty of that, much like his teacher, Max Schlossberg, is that it's what he taught was not a static philosophy, or that book and his exercises, that da dee da da be dee dum. That's not a static philosophy. It's something that is ever evolving. And I got to see Mr. Stamp teach other students and give other lessons. And the way he would teach the same material with them was very different than what he taught me and what he said to me. Although the end goal concept and the philosophy and basis was the same, the route that he took them on was different than the route that he took me on, or what he said to them was different than what he said to me. And what it made me realize is that the genius in him and in Schlossberg is that it's not a one size fits all, that it's very much akin to what is somebody's skill set? What are they trying to do? What are their aspirations? What kind of playing are they doing? Are they more of a commercial player? Are they more of a symphonic player? What kind of commercial player are they? Are they more of a soloist or orchestral player in a symphonic or a classical realm? Or anything in between, more of a hybrid player? And he would tailor everything toward both the manner of the context of their playing and the skill set that they brought to the table. And the genius in Stamp was that one exercise could go any number of different ways in any number of different manners of application. And that kind of creative problem solving and that kind of approach toward the music. And it was always that it was toward a musical end. I mean, it was never toward just the physical end of just playing this and getting this to happen. It was getting this to happen because that's what we want to express in the music at that moment. So with always that end goal process there, then, filling in, the backhoe of everything behind that, that's supporting that, is aligning everything in place and getting things happening, efficiently, getting that ratio of working less and always, and getting more, getting your air working correctly, getting your sound ringing properly, buzzing on the mouthpiece, buzzing on the lips, everything related to the end product on the instrument. I mean, just so many things with Stamp really just gave me the tool set and kind of illuminated the tool set that I had and enlarged it exponentially, and really gave me the path forward that has led to hopefully what's been a lot of success for me. And, I mean, all these people that I've mentioned have had a huge effect on me, but I have to say the one that stands just a little above everybody else has to be James Stamp.
Wow, how inspiring was that? First of all, a very big thank you to all of my guests. I had a blast talking with all of you. As a reminder, this is video 2 in a 15-part series, so make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss the rest of them. I really took a lot away from this video, and I really hope that it inspired you too. My biggest takeaway from this video is that teachers and musical influence comes in many forms. From instructors and mentors that we seek out, to those in our section, our studio, as well as the person looking back at you in the mirror. But a common thread from all of these trumpeters was a desire to grow, seek out answers, and to apply the lessons that they learned to their own lives in a way that fit them as a person and as a player. I really thought that it was amazing to hear how many different teachers so many of these trumpeters worked with, and that they sought them out well into their professional careers. Now, in this video, we learned about their past teachers and mentors, those who influenced them to become the players that they are today. Now, some things can be easily taught from a book, but other things require real-world experience and on-the-job training to figure out. Which brings me to my next question. In the next video, I've asked everyone the following question. What do you do to recover after a hard gig? Again, I have seen all the answers, so I can already say you're not going to want to miss this next video. It has so much amazing info, and your chops will thank you. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, let me know in the comments below. While you're at it, hit that like button and share this video with a friend. That would really mean a lot to me. I want to thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.